Good day everyone! For today's video, we're gonna make a power feed bracket like this one in AutoCAD. So let's get started. Let's start first on this part. So to make this inner circle with a diameter of 1.13, what we're gonna do is to type Command C, Enter, and you can choose any point you like, but I'll just go with the points 70 and 70. Now since the given data is a diameter, just click this diameter in the command line and type 1.13. Next is to create the second circle with a diameter of 2.06. So we're just gonna repeat what we did earlier. Then type Command C, Enter, click diameter in the command line, and type 2.06, Enter. Next is to create this part here with a diameter of 2.88. Type Command C, select the diameter here, and type 2.88, Enter. For now, it will look like this, and we'll fix it later after the other parts are created. Now, to create this upper part here, the box 1, we will use this length 5.26 and this width 1.26 and 1.62. So first, we will create this center line as the basis. Type Command L, locate the end point of the second circle because the line started there in our figure. Click the end point and drag it to the right for at least 8 units and press enter. We'll adjust it later if needed. So to make this look like the figure, click the line twice and this will pop up. Change the color into magenta and the line type into center. Now that we have it, we can proceed to the upper portion of this figure. We will create first a line from the center of the circle until its length is 1.62, since as you can see in the figure, 1.62 is the length of this part starting from the center line. So type Command L, locate the center of this circle, and type the length 1.62, and drag the crosshair to the left, type 5.26 as the length, then drag the crosshair down, type 1.26 as the length, drag it to the left, and type 3.62 as its length, and drag it upwards to close it. And let's just delete these excess lines, type Command TR, and remove the unwanted lines. Now you can see we have another line here, so we'll just type Command Center Line, or you can type Command L, then locate the midpoint of this line here, and drag it towards here just like in the figure, and enter. So let's just change this line by clicking it twice and changing its color and line type. Next are these small circles inside. So the distance of the first circle to this line is about 0.76. So let's create a line first. Type Command L, select the midpoint, and type 0.76 and enter. So from the end point of this line, we will create the circle with radius of 0.1875 as indicated in the data here, which means that the small or the 6 small circle in this model have a radius of 0.1875. So type Command C and type 0.1875, enter. Now let's just copy this circle to make the other one. So type Command CO, select this circle, and enter. Select the center as its base point and type its distance, which is 2.26, and enter. And also delete this line. Now notice that this box in the figure have round edges, and the data stated that fillets have a radius of 0.12 And that's what we're gonna do next. So type Command F, select the radius in the command line, and type 0.12. Enter. And select the multiple since all the edges are needed to be round. Now to create this line here, I will be using a tangent line just for a smoother connecting of the lines. Type Command L and input underscore tan, enter. I'll just click the part here and type another underscore tan and click this part of the second circle since that's where the line connects in the figure and enter. As you can see, the lines are just connected right and no excess lines are made. Let's now put the dimensions of the figure we've made to check if we're still on the right path. So what I'm gonna do is to keep this model neat and to easily see if there are errors made, I'll add another layer and use that for our dimensions. So just click Layer Properties and select this one here to add another layer. I'll just rename it as Dimensions and set it as the current layer by clicking this. So let's proceed with our dimensions. So for this part, first, type Command DIM or dim, locate the center of this circle and the endpoint of this one. Let's do the same for the rest of the figures we've made. For this one, since its leader is much longer, we'll just create one. Select this one, leader, and click the circle, drag it towards the position you want, then click the text of the first dimension we've made, copy the text and paste it on the new leader. So now we can delete the first one and make some adjustments to the position of the dimensions of other dimensions like in the figure. Next is to set our original layer as the current to proceed making the other figure. Also, you can turn the dimension layer off if you feel confused at some part of creating the rest of the figure to see things clearly since this model have many lines going on. So I'll just keep it on for a while. Next, we can now make the round part here using the data R is 0.94. So type Command L, locate the center of this circle and drag it downwards to make a starting point for this line. Then type the length 0.94, enter, and this will serve as our radius. Next is type Command C to create a circle. Select the endpoint of this line and type 0.94 as the radius. Now to make it look like the figure, let's make this line first in any length and just adjust it later if needed. Type Command L, locate the quadrant side and drag it down and put a length of 2 for now. Now we will do the trimming. Type Command DR, enter, and select the parts to be deleted. Let's switch the layers to put the dimension. Type Command DIM, and select this arc and enter. Switch the layer again and proceed to the other figure since we need this part to complete the rest of the figure in the left. Now notice that this line of this part is in line with the top quadrant of this circle here. So type Command L, locate the endpoint of this top quadrant and drag the crosshair to the right. But since there is no data for the distance of the two figures, we're just gonna make a close assumption on its length, say for about 4 units, and enter. Next is this line here. So since the center line of this circle connects the center of the small circle here, we're gonna do that. Type Command L and locate the endpoint of this center line and drag it in line with this line here. Enter. Now we will just connect the line and input its right lengths. Type Command L and start with the endpoint here. Drag it upwards until this endpoint is reached. Then drag the crosshair to the right and type 0.56 as the length. Drag it down in line with this line and enter. Next is to make this line 1.88. So type Command L again. Start with this point. Drag it to the right and type 1.88 as the length. Drag it upwards in line with this one and close it, then enter. Let's put their dimensions for now. So select the layer for dimensions, then type Command DIM, select this midpoint and this one. Next is this one and this one, enter. And let's change again our layer into the original one. Now for this tricky part, notice that this line in this part is a center line of this area. So to determine the length of this side, we need the length of this short part to 0.62. So to do that, let's consider first the length of this whole side, which is 0.70, and the length of this side, which is 0.56. To get the length of this small line, just subtract 0.56 from 0.70, and the answer will be 0.14. And we will add that amount to 0.62 to be able to get the distance of this initial side to its center line. So adding those two will give us 0.76. Now that's the distance from this point to this point. So to get the distance from the center to this side, just divide 0.76 by 2 and that will give us 0.38. That will be the length that we will use. So type Command L. Let's start in the midpoint of this line so we can just delete it easily later. Then type the length 0.38. Enter. So before closing the line, let's just use mirror for this figure since it's just symmetrical to this part here. Type Command MI, select the objects needed and enter. Select the midpoint and just position it to your desired area. Now, since in this figure, this line goes on until the bottom part, we'll just extend it and just adjust it later if needed. Type Command L and make 5 as its length and enter. And delete the base lines we used here. Next is to create this circle here. So type Command Z, select the center and type 0.1875 for its radius. Let's now put the dimensions, change the layer, and type Command DIM. Select this endpoint and type 0.62 and enter. Next, click this endpoint and type 0.70, enter. So again, click this endpoint and type 1.30 as the length, enter. For another dimension, click this endpoint and type 5.06 as the length, enter. This will be our guide for some parts of this figure. So let's adjust first the dimensions according to the given figure. And now that we are done with that, change back the layer to the original one and let's start figuring out how to plot this line, this one, and this one, so that we can complete the other part of this figure. Now, notice that this part is in line with this part. So let's do that first. Type Command L, locate the endpoint of this line of the left figure, and drag your mouse or crosshair until this point. Then click it as the first point, and just drag it towards the end of this point, and just like that. Next is this line here. Notice that it is in line with the intersection of this line and the third circle. So let's now plot it. Type Command L, start here in the intersection, and drag your mouse or crosshair until this line. So click it and drag it to the end of this dimension. Lastly is this line here, which as you can see is in line with the bottom part of this figure. So to do that, type Command L, locate the endpoint of this one, and drag the mouse up until this point, and just position it in line with the end of this dimension. Next is to just connect the figure we've made just like in the given figure or the given model. So I'll just extend this line and this one. Next, I'm gonna fix the edges of these parts just like in the figure. So type Command F, and since the radius was already set earlier, just select multiple in the command line. I'll also extend this line in line with this one and just adjust it later if needed. Also, this part will be extended, and this part also, following the figure. So we will do this part next, and we will use this data to make it. Let's switch the layer first. Type Command DIM, select this endpoint, and type 0.56, enter. So switch back to our original layer, type Command L, drag the crosshair to the endpoint of this dimension as a guide for the right position of the point to be used, and click this point and drag it until the endpoint here. Next is to round up this edge. Type Command F and select these lines, enter. So let's just extend the line here. To round up the edge here, and type Command F and select these lines, enter. So just fix it again by extending it. Then trim the excess lines here, type Command TR, enter, and select this line. Now we will create these green dashed lines here to create this triangle part and this line here. Let's start first by doing the middle one since we already have a guide for that. Type Command L and start from this one's endpoint and drag it to the end, enter. Double click the line to change its properties. Change the color into green and the line type as hidden or dash. Now for the other green dash line, we will be using the small circles of the left figure since they are in line with each other. Type Command L and locate the top quadrant of this circle as a guide for the line, then just select their intersection and enter. Then change its properties. Next, we will just use mirror to create the other line. So type Command MI, enter, select this line and the midpoint of this one, and enter. Next is the green dash line in the upper part. So notice that it is in line with the top quadrant of this first circle on the left figure. So we'll just gonna create that line just like what we did to this one. So type Command L, locate the top quadrant of this circle, and just trace it until we made it to the intersection here. Then change its properties and use mirror for the other green dash line below. With that, we can now create this line and these triangles. Let's start first with this line here. Type Command L and select this endpoint and drag it until the end of this 1.30 dimension. Continue the line until the endpoint of 5.08 is met and enter. Now to create this line here, since its dimension is the same as this line above here, what we're gonna do is create another line for this part, and we will use this green dash as its guide. Enter. Next is to adjust this green dash line until this endpoint. Next is this inner triangle. Just copy it. Type Command CO. Enter this endpoint as the base point and drag it towards the endpoint of this green dash line. Then create another line to close the line. To close this line and enter. Let's change the layer now for the dimensions. Then type Command DIM to plot this 1.88 dimension. Select this endpoint and type 1.88. Then select the endpoint of this dimension and drag it to the left and type 1.12. Next, select again the endpoint of this dimension and drag it to the left and type 4.70 for its length. For the next dimension, select the center of this circle, drag it downwards, and type the length 3.38, enter. I'll just align first the endpoint of this dimension and this one. Now that it's aligned, type Command DIM again and select the endpoint of these dimensions, drag it to the right and type 0.80 for its length. And make some adjustment to the position of the dimension like in the figure. Next is the dimensions for the left figure. Select the center of this circle, drag it to the right, and type 2.62 for this one. Select the endpoint of this dimension and drag it to the right. Type 1.70, enter. So that will be for now. Let's switch back the layer to its original one to fix the lines. We'll start first with the left figure to be able to identify this center line in the right figure. Now, since the top quadrant of this circle is in line with the bottom quadrant of this first circle here, that's what we're gonna do. Type Command L first, so we will start at this endpoint and drag it down. Type 1.88 for the circle's diameter. Next, we will type Command C. Select the midpoint of this line and just drag it towards the other endpoint. After that, just delete the baseline we've made. Before we make the center line for this part, let's finish first the lines of this left figure. First, we need to connect the second circle to this circle through a line. So we will just do what we did earlier. Type Command L, type _tan to create a tangent line, and select this side. Enter. Then type _tan again and select this side. Enter. Next, we will just trim the excess lines. Now is to create the inner circle, which is kind of tricky since our only basis for its length is the green dash line in the right figure. Looking at the distance between these two green dash lines, I noticed that the distance is kind of 1/3 of this circle size. And based on the data from the left figure, the circle is about 1.12 units. Since the distance look like the thirds of 1.12 length, I just divided 1.12 by 3, which gives an answer of 0.3733. And I will use that as the radius of our inner circle here. So type Command C and select the center of the circle. Then type 0.3733 as its radius. Enter. Next is to create this line here that will connect both figure. What we're gonna do is just extend this line to this part. Then we're gonna create the center line for this right figure to proceed doing the right figure. So type Command L, select the center of this circle, and drag it until the intersection is reached. I'll just adjust first this line, just like in the figure. Then double-click the line to change its properties. Then I'll just close this part by creating more lines. The next thing to do is the circle part here, which has a diameter of 1.12 stated on this side of the figure. So type Command C, locate the center by dragging the crosshair from this endpoint to the center line, then click it. Select the diameter in the command line and type 1.12, enter. Next is the inner circle that has a radius of 0.1875, so type Command C again. Next is to create the green dashed lines here, and our basis for that is this inner circle in the left figure. Our dashed lines here are in line with the top and bottom quadrant of this circle. So to do that, type Command L, start from the top quadrant of this circle, then trace it all the way to this side and enter. Just double click this line to change its properties. And I'll just use mirror to create the bottom dashed line. Let's now finish this bottom portion of this figure. So extend first the line just like the figure. Then copy the small circle here to the midpoint of this portion. So extend first this line here. Now let's create the lines here that connect to the side quadrants of the circle. Next is a line above the small circle. Then next is to make this line here, but to know its distance, we will use the dimension 2.30 and the radius 1.50. Switch our layer first into dimension, then type Command DIM, and just apply the dimensions given in our figure. Next, switch the layer again into our original one to create the circle. Type Command C, select the endpoint of this dimension as the center, and type 1.5 as its radius. Now we can create this line and drag it until the intersection is met. So extend this line here, then round up the edges required. for this one here, let's just move it to its right position and trim the excess lines. And let's proceed to this bottom portion. Type Command C and select this endpoint here as the center. Select diameter in the command line and type 1.12. Next is the inner circle with a radius of 0.1875. Then we will extend this line here until it's in line with the top quadrant of this figure. Then create a line to connect it to the top quadrant of this circle and enter. Next is to create this line and this line. We will use the dimension we put earlier as our basis and guide, then enter. Now we need to create a circle here with a radius of 1.76. So to make it easier to plot, I'll just use a circle with two tangent and a radius. So type Command C, type TTR for tangent radius, select this part and this one for its tangent, and type the radius 1.75. Enter. There you have it. Now we will just remove all the excess lines according to the given figure by trimming. Then round this edge here. Since the right side is done, let's finish the left figure. Let's do this part first. As you can notice, this line is in line with the bottom quadrant of this circle, so that will be our basis to create the line. We'll just trace its endpoint to the dimension we did earlier. Then drag it upwards and type 1.12 as its length, and enter. Now we can create these green dashed lines here using the small circle's top and bottom quadrant as our basis. Then double-click it to change its properties. Then I'll just use the mirror command to create the other dashed lines. Now for this dashed line part, we will just use the center of this circle and the midpoint of this part. Since these lines here are in line with those points, we're gonna create a line first from here to here and enter, and just trim some parts. Then I'll use an offset for this line. Type Command O. Type 1.76 as its distance. Then select this line and click it. Now we need to find the angle used for this line here to be tilt. So I'll just make a small line here and make sure it's in 0 degree. Enter. And check its angle by getting its angular dimension. So we have 10 degrees. Let's now make this line here and drag it until the intersection here is met. And since this line is 90 degrees, we'll just reduce it by 10 to get the 10-degree angle and enter. Let's now proceed making these dashed lines, starting with the circle. So let's start at the center of this one, then type 2.38 as its radius and enter. Then double click it to change its properties. Then trim the excess lines. Now since this line here is a center line of these two dashed lines that have a distance of 0.56, we will just divide 0.56 by 2 to get the distance from here to here. So let's just take the offset of this center line, and 0.56 divided by 2 is 0.28. So that will be the distance of our line here, and enter. Then click the right side, then repeat it for the left side. Let's now trim the excess lines. And reduce the length of this one. Delete this one and just copy the line here to here and enter. Then we will just round the edges and change its properties. Lastly are these lines below. So the guide I will use for this one is this one. The top and the bottom quadrant of this circle for this one and this one. So let's start with the center line. Enter. And get the half value of 0.56 and 0.94 to get this part using the center line as the starting point. Let's use again the offset and set the distance of 0.28 first since it is the half of 0.56. Select the center and click the right side. Select again the center line and type the distance 0.47 since it is the half of 0.94. Click again the right side. Then just reduce the length of these lines. Next is use the mirror command to create these lines for the other side. Now for the center line here and the two dashed lines, our guide will be the small circle here. So create a line first using the center of this circle for its position and using the side quadrant of this circle here for its length. Then enter and change its properties by double-clicking the lines. Next are the dashed line with the top quadrant of this circle as the basis. Change its properties by double-clicking the lines. Then use mirror to create the bottom dashed line. Now that the parts are done, we just need to fix and put other dimensions. Let's change the layer first, then proceed with putting the rest of the dimensions, and fix some of them. and some final touches for our original layer. So that would be all. Thanks for hanging out with me until this power feed bracket model is finished. Until next time.